We're asking the question, how far can you vary from your grower standard practice on your fertility program and still get yield? In fact, make a bunch of positive return on it. That's the question in this episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve.
Welcome to XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve podcast, where real farmers share real insights and real results to help you improve your farming operation. This episode is brought to you by Simon Innovation. Protect your crops and maximize yield with a full lineup of innovative precision tools engineered to enhance the efficiency and accuracy of your sprayer. Visit simoninnovations.com and start getting more ROI out of your sprayer. And now, here's your host, Damian Mason.
Hey there, welcome to another fantastic episode of XtremeAg's Cutting the Curve. I've got a great one for you today because we're recapping a field trial that was done in conjunction with AgrolLquid at Matt Miles Farms. We took 4 different fertility programs submitted by 4 different people. Head agronomist with AgrolLquid, Stephanie Zelinko. You've seen her on plenty of episodes I've done with her. Galynn with AgrolLquid. They both put in a different fertility program. Matt Miles, who's on this call, put the actual trial together, and then Kelly Garrett from Iowa put in what he had as recommendations. So you can imagine 4 different trials, and this was not like 2 rows of corn. This was legit. It was done in Arkansas, and they said, hey, here's what I think we're going to do. Matt put in what is his grower standard practice. Each of the other 3 said, we're going to tweak it and put in this recommendation on fertility. The idea is, in a sub $4 corn environment, how many tweaks can you make so that you still get the yield, but then you get the return on investment by putting in fertility in a little different way. So anyway, Stephanie, you're probably the go-to on the fertility on this, but I want to talk to Matt first since he's the one that put it in. This is kind of a cool trial. This is probably my favorite trial that was done at any of the field days. Various things that happen at field days. This one's different than most. It wasn't just, hey, here's how big my ears are. Tell me about the trial.
Yeah, the trial was pretty unique to me. You know, Kelly and I talked about it once during the season. He said, you're going to be mad at me if I kick your, anyway, I'm not going to say that on what he said on the podcast. And I said, no, actually, my feelings are going to be hurt a little bit because you come down in my backyard and done it, but it's also going to save me money. And it just kind of trickled along with Stephanie and Galynn both. You know, we joked about it at the field day, but I knew then, looking at what I was looking at, that I wasn't getting the return out of what I was putting out, which is a good thing for me to learn.
Before we go to Stephanie to talk about some of the more agronomy types, Galynn, you and I at each of the field days have talked about, and by the way, if you're listening or watching this and you didn't make it to any of our field days, go on the XtremeAg.farm website. We've got a bunch of clips and videos that we do to bring the field day to you, but you really should have attended 5 amazing field days. Matt's was at the end of June. Kelly's in the middle of June. Great education. But at each one of these field days, when Galynn would take the stage and do a few quick minutes about what they wanted to have as takeaways for the farmers that came to the field days, you talked about the economics. And you said, let's face the reality. We might be in a sub $4 corn environment. You could spend until you lose the farm. You also could be really smart and tweak some adjustments to tweak some things to your program. And you covered this at each one of the field days. But this one was the favorite one because you actually put what you recommended into that trial.
Yeah, you know, we've talked at all of those situations about, is the profit at the top end or is there a point of diminishing returns? It's never an exact science, Damian, and we've talked about that. And so this is just us kind of matching wits, I guess, and deciding where those diminishing returns are. And I mean, to my own point, my yield was the highest, my profit was not. And so where did I hit that point of diminishing returns and overspend that could have, saved me a little bit of money and held my yield up there? And the purpose of this is that education process to say, don't be so stuck. It's like I grew up on a farm, as you know, and I'm still involved in farming today. And it's almost easy for me to indoctrinate myself to my own way of thinking. And things like this kind of get you out of that to see if there are other ways that you can do things.
The benefit of this was that we've all been to field days. You know, we work in ag, we have field days. I can go back to being a DuPont intern in 1991. And, went to field days. And what they usually did was talked about weed control and how big the crop was. This one talked about the money. Kelly, we'll go to you, and we're going to wrap with, we're going to get back to Stephanie because she's going to talk about, because she's the winner. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, dear listener, she won the competition. But anyway, they got beat by a girl. Anyway, Kelly, you're the money guy. We just recorded an episode where we talked all about revenue per acre and net revenue per acre. This is right there. Net revenue per acre, this whole thing. You put in a different package of fertility than Galynn did, than Stephanie did, than Matt did. And you dialed it back from grower standard practice. I'm looking here. You recommended almost $50 less of fertility spend per acre than Matt's grower standard practice.
Yes, and a lot of that was nitrogen. We very much, we've talked a lot about it, using the SAP test, trying to make a very detailed type of conversation decision and balance the plant. We want to make sure that we're using all the nitrogen. The term we use is assimilation. And that, I think we put on 50 gallons of UAN. Matt would know that. We put on 150 pounds of nitrogen was all we put on. We put it on later in the season. And then I think what Matt thought was normal for down there, things like that. And, that's the reason we use the SAP test, Damian. I can't speak enough about that because we feel that now we can make a very informed, educated decision.
By the way, if you are listening to this, I encourage you to watch it because I'm holding in my hand the breakout and the numbers. And we're going to have Will, the producer of all of our episodes, put this graph on here so you can see it with your own two eyes because it's definitely worth looking at. I'm going to give you the quick, and then we'll get it to Stephanie, the winner of the competition. Grower standard practice on fertility, Matt would have spent almost $195. That's obviously per acre, $194.96. Kelly's recommendation was the second cheapest. He recommended a program that spent $145.67. Galynn was going to spend, or did spend, $156.60 per acre. Stephanie spent the least amount and got the biggest return for doing so, $141.14. What's fascinating to me is that, Stephanie, you spent almost $54 less per acre and than Matt's grower standard practice, and you actually got a bushel and a third. You got 75 pounds more corn out of doing so. Talk to me.
Well, I think one thing that was interesting about all of this is we did all yield pretty similar. There was about 3 bushel difference between that high yield and that low yield. And that just shows that no matter, what agronomist you're working with, you can get to that same yield, in this case, 4 different ways. I just got the lucky end, I guess, that I spent the least dollars to get that. So that put me ahead when we came to that final calculation. By, I wasn't the top yield, but I was the lowest spend. So that combination made me the winner here.
Matt, you said before we hit the record button, all of these, your grower standard practice, and then Stephanie's, again, $53, almost $54 difference on the fertility spend, keeping everything else the same. The seed, the diesel, the trips across the field, the return to capital, all those things the same. $54 almost, $53 to $44 less spend, and you still all of your practices yield in excess of 240 bushel corn. You said I can make money at 240 bushel corn, period. Well, why the hell wouldn't you take her fertility program and get 240 bushel corn versus yours? Is there something that you're worried about next year, year after year after? Is there a reason that you would stick with yours versus hers?
Well, in this specific instance, and I'm not making excuses, okay, it was a skippy stand. We actually kept the field because it was the AgrolLquid plot. So we destroyed all the corn around it. We kept the plot. Stand counts were very uneven and were lower than what we intended to have. Some of the plots had a little bit better stand count than the others. I don't know that made any difference. Depends on emergence. So you can have a better stand count and uneven emergence and it hurts you. We had some wind damage come in. It affected some of them a little worse than the other one. So why would I not take this? Windgrow asked me the same thing on a call with Kelly. Said, well, you're going to do all this next year. And I said, no, I'm definitely not changing. That's a knee-jerk situation. Now, do I think that I can implement this am I going to do more acres of it? Absolutely, yes. You know, this year was a different year. Kelly put all of his fertilizer out at one time. With the spring rains we had and the soils that we have, we leaked some of that nitrogen out that even Stephanie put some out earlier. Galynn didn't. So if Stephanie had to put all of hers out at one time, it was the perfect timing for the application. If Stephanie had done that, she may have beat us even more because she would have had the full use of all of her nitrogen. So you can't take a 1-year trial and knee jerk into a 100% change your farm. Now I will do that on a 3-year, sometimes on a 2. If it's a good firm result in 2 different years, I'm going to increase those acres each year that it beats me. So what this has done is made me open my eyes to the fact that, hey, you know, maybe these foliars are not the thing. They're farming more like I did when I started with corn, and then I started getting with the program here and trying to increase in furrow and put out foliars. And I'm not so sure in my area that they're paying like they will in areas where you have a different climate. So I'm very, very confused on where to go from here as far as a farm wide.
You're very confused. We just gave you the numbers. I said we're going to put this graph out here. It's very simple. You do what Stephanie Zelinko tells you to do, and you make more money.
Is that what you want your farmer to do if he had a test on your farm?
I want him to do what's right by the land. I want him to do what's right for him economically so that he can be here and thrive another year, another year, another year, because I think that's what your point is. Here's what I want to know about. By the way, if Matt seems a little testy, dear listener, he's only had 10 hours of sleep in the last 2.5 days. He's trying to beat a hurricane and harvest. So he might just be a little testier than usual. He's always, you know what, get a hold of him in the wintertime. He's always in jovial, happy mode. Answer me this. Galynn, you were nodding your head that you think it is a knee-jerk reaction. You wouldn't recommend that Matt go full tilt and just change everything. But the truth is somewhere in the middle, somewhere between what Stephanie did and somewhere between his grower standard practice. Is it time for another trial, or what would you do next year?
Yeah, it is time for another trial. And look, Stephanie and I are brainstorming things we can do next year that kind of might be a little bit of a continuation of this educational going forward. But the reason I was nodding my head is, you know, statistics tell you don't make radical decisions based on a small sample set. And this was one location, 1 year of weather events. Matt's looking at it right. The thing is that you got to look at it and at least question. Trials like this are just for you to stop and go, is there something I've overlooked? And I'm an outside-in plant manager. In other words, I'm going to do everything through the soil that I can possibly do. I'm not a big outside-in foliar guy. That doesn't mean there isn't a place for it. And it doesn't mean that I won't learn to do that going forward, but I always challenge myself inside out, reduce trips over the field. I like simplicity. Matt alluded to the fact I did one big shot of nitrogen. What if it would have rained and flooded that field then? So there's puts and takes here. And Matt's point about don't change wholesale based on 1 year. Yes, we learned something this year, but is that replicable over the long haul?
Matt, did either of these, okay, we got 4 different things, and obviously there's a big difference in the spend, but that's just talking about the product. Did her program have $20 more of application cost, machines across the field? Did any of them, do any of these numbers, when I say $141 of fertility spend to your $195 of fertility spend, and then Kelly and Galynn were in between those two, do any of them carry an extra $30 of hassle manpower cost?
If any of them did, it would have been mine. I don't think Stephanie did any. Stephanie, you didn't do a foliar. I don't remember 100%. I don't think she did a foliar, which I did, which increased my cost. I say that. Yes, it increased my cost because we actually did that with an airplane. So,
and that's not on this sheet right here. This is just product. This is not the application. I mean, if you do give yourself a return for application, machinery, manpower, etc.,
that could get greater. Absolutely.
Okay, Kelly, you oftentimes have said, I think that we are going to continue to learn that we've overapplied fertility. We are not getting it in the plant, et cetera, et cetera. You were conservative. You were the second lowest spend out here. The takeaway, I think, it continues to reinforce. You did a nitrogen reduction study last year. This continues to reinforce your thing that we've just been spending too much money on fertility, probably for our whole careers, and maybe even your dad's and grandpa's.
I agree. You know, we've never had a really good way to measure it. And we always want to make sure we have enough on. And it's, you know, a lot of us, myself included, my farm included, my family, it's the more on method. More on is always better. And now we're trying to get into that. We're trying to become into that mentality, you know, and I got to give a lot of credit to Mike Evans and Mike Wingrove. We try to be as detailed as possible and spend only what we're going to get back on and get a return on investment. We actually, because of the weather Matt was having, things like that, we actually cut some things out of that we were going to add. You know, it'd be interesting to know, would they have added yield and added an ROI? You know, I don't know. Yeah, Matt shouldn't make a change based on this one test, but knowing Matt the way I will, he'll continue to try this. And coming down there and using the practices that we're using up here in Iowa, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know that we would make 140 bushel corn necessarily, because it's such a different geography. I was just excited to be involved for the simple education to see what would happen. And some of the things we learned down there, we'll try up here, you know, because of how we're learning. And, you know, that's the value of XtremeAg. That's the value of working with AgrolLquid, is to go to Matt's, go to Temple's, go to Johnny's and all those different geographies, and then try all the different research that you have and see what correlates.
Well, Damon, I want to say something to add to Kelly's and what you're talking about here. I know you didn't call on me. I've been watching Kelly do this, you know, since XtremeAg started, or since he started this process. I had like 212 units of nitrogen on that 240 bushels. You know what I would have had on it 5 years ago? 288. I would have had 1.2 pounds of nitrogen per bushel of corn. And so I'm not tooting my horn, but I've improved that just from watching these things happen with Kelly and Kelly's program down to the 214 or 212, whatever it was. So just imagine what the spread would have been with my old school 1.2 pounds of nitrogen per bushel versus what it is today. It would have been, I don't know how many more dollars, a lot.
So it's safe to say, I just did some quick little math with my calculator that is given to me when I went to Purdue in 1988. Kids, this is what a calculator looked like almost 40 years ago. Anyway, is it safe to say, before it was on your phone, is that a 25% reduction on nitrogen just in the last few years?
280 to 210 is a 25% reduction.
Yeah, I mean that's remarkable. So, and the point is, and we might have evidence that you could go another 20% less than that, right?
Well, I was at 150 and Matt was at 210. So yeah, there's another 25% that I cut out from where he's at now.
Kelly is 52% of what my total would have been 5 years ago.
Yeah.
He's half the nitrogen that I used 5 years ago.
So Kelly's point that he's made, at least on a dozen calls, the holy grail of American agriculture, you've got to grow corn. To grow corn, you've got to throw out more nitrogen. That's the Moron method, et cetera. And what we just proved is in a short period of 5 years, we've proven we can cut nitrogen by half and still not sacrifice yield.
Yeah.
That's a takeaway. Stephanie, Kelly talked about geography. We got everything from Oklahoma to Arkansas to Michigan for you to Iowa for Kelly. We all deal with farmers, and we know that the favorite thing they'll say is, that won't work here. You're a Central Michigan farmer. You and your husband are a Central Michigan farmers. You put together fertility prep. You covered the United States for AgrolLquid, for crying out loud. But you've heard at every meeting you've gone to, yeah, that'll work up there in Indiana, but that won't work over here in Nebraska. You hear it all. The point is, you put together a fertility program that made money and made 242 bushel corn in Arkansas.
That's right. And really, you hear that all the time, is it's not going to work, in my backyard. You also hear it when you switch from crops, guys that, okay, it works on corn, but it doesn't work on peanuts, In reality, fertility is fertility and plants are plants. You just need to go back to those basics and look at the soil, figure out what the crop needs are, and then address those accordingly. And so really it's not as scary as it seems when you switch geographies or you switch crops. It's, pretty simple fertility and plant management.
You're nicer than me. I was actually picking on farmers, telling them that they're all too close-minded and they all want to pretend that it doesn't work there. We sat into Kelly's tool shed 2 years ago when you and I recorded an episode, and we addressed this exact topic of that won't work here. And you went back to the basics of, well, agronomy is still agronomy and plant science is still plant science. There's climatological differences. Yes, there's soil type differences, but those two things. Kelly?
Well, again, the value of a peer group like XtremeAg, and it won't work here.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of soybean desiccation before. Matt taught it to us, and now it's one of the greatest things I've ever done. And all of us on here are friends. We all talk about our farms. Stephanie's texting all of us a couple of days ago because her husband Ryan desiccated beans for the first time. And Stephanie looks calm, cool, and collected, but she's nervous as hell about these beans that they killed up there. And
We are.
and Matt didn't think there's any way you could raise 240 bushel corn with 6/10 of nitrogen. Stephanie and I had never heard of soybean desiccation before. And, we've talked with Galynn about some different PGRs and stuff that we use and things like that. So this idea that it doesn't work here, we are really eradicating that thought with XtremeAg, because Oklahoma, Arkansas, Michigan, Iowa, and we're all sharing practices that nobody had ever done before XtremeAg.
Yeah, no, it's fun for me. And obviously I am picking on farmers because I've been hearing it my whole life, just like we all have. That won't work here. I've seen it from township to township. Well, you can do that over in Union Township, but that won't work over here in Lancaster Township. I'm like, how could it be that damn different? Okay, the soil, you've got a different soil type. That's it.
We give Matt a hard time for worrying. And I tell you what, I think Stephanie's his cousin because she's worried about these beans right now. I promise you.
I like that. Matt, you got Stephanie worried.
Well, I warn people all the time, it's not an art. I mean, it's not a science, it's an art when you're desiccating. So it will drive you insane sometimes. I can tell you stories.
Speaking of, each of us go through here because this is a great topic. We don't need to beat the horse to death, but I just think this is amazing that we had a $58 difference in the return. That's the other thing. If Will's putting this graphic back up here, I told you there's about $54 difference on the spend. And then if you're looking at the graph, you might question, well, then why does it show a $58.57 variation from grower standard? Who wants to speak to that? Matt Galynn, the point on that is?
Yeah, so, and I think that is the point there is there was a difference in the spend. That's $58 might be someone's profit this year. I mean, let's be honest. And our economics and our win was based on the Chicago Board of Trade cash price the day it was harvested. So so that people don't think we're fudging a number there. But
yeah, so if you look at this graph, the one that I'm holding here that we are asking our producer to put on the screen so you can look at it and analyze it. If you're wondering, it says crop value per unit. They had to have some sort of a number. So they used $3.65, which was cash price Chicago Board of Trade, or as we used to call it, CME Group, on day of harvest. That's why that's there. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, that's your challenges. And at Chad Henderson's field day, we did plots for $4, $6, and $8 corn for this same purpose. But the reason is when we started the year, I don't know that any of us thought on harvest day $3.65 corn would populate that spot. So it is hard. And this is just, again, us thinking about those costs and how they will impact our bottom line. So I know here where I'm at, I mean, $50 an acre probably would be a big win this year. Now, can input costs adjust? Can I make different decisions? Yeah, I can, but that's why we do these sorts of things, is to help that process going forward, because we may not bounce back to $6 corn by next year, So these things, these learnings need to continue into the future.
Galynn, I'm not the expert on the markets, but you said we may not bounce back. I might just, Kelly's the gambler on here. I will take half of my net worth and gamble that we will not get to $6 by next year.
Well, you better make sure what the basis is, because what if someone has a $3 over basis, Damian? You're going to be paying them a lot.
That only happens in Matt's part of the world where they get $3 over basis. We know that it doesn't happen up here because he harvests corn into August. Big takeaway. Stephanie, you're the technician. You've put together literally, I'm sure, thousands of studies. What's a big takeaway on this one here? Just the money? Is it just the money, or is there another takeaway?
No, it's not just the money. The money, is what growers are concerned about, and that's the fun part of the conversation. But like I said earlier, it's, understanding that you can get to the same yield outcome in a number of different ways. And that kind of goes back to earlier, can I do this in my backyard, or I can't do it in my backyard? In reality, if you know that agronomy and know what nutrients are needed, you can get to that same endpoint in a number of different ways. And so all of us had different programs, all different approaches. We all still got right around that 240 bushel corn, which is good. And so you can do that whether you're in Iowa or Michigan or Arkansas. I think that take home is just understand that agronomic side and, put those practices out there to see if you can get that yield.
Kelly, did you ever think that you'd be, growing up in Iowa, corn, that there'd be a guy in Arkansas that can vary a fertility program by $60 a spend and still get 240 or 243, 244 bushels of corn? Isn't that remarkable?
Yes, it's remarkable. I wish I could raise 243 bushel corn every year.
And then the other part of it is, besides cementing your belief that we have overspent on fertility and overapplied fertility, is there any other takeaway from this trial for you?
It's that you need to continue to educate yourself on what's possible on your land and your farm. We're doing trials every year. Matt's doing trials every year.
Yep.
And to continue to do those trials, to learn and never stop trying to get better. Matt taught us to desiccate with gramoxone. We're desiccating right now with some copper. Yeah. We're just trying to do more things, trying to learn and to do better, things like that. The continued use of more and more calcium. I got a book right here beside me on my desk, When Weeds Talk, that talks about when you have available calcium in the soil, how much easier and better your weed control gets. XtremeAg has opened my eyes that I don't know very much, and I need to learn more. And I still don't know and look at what we've learned in this trial, and I still don't know very much. That's
would the 20-year-old sleeveless shirt tough guy look at the 50-year-old version of yourself and say, this guy's geeked out, he's reading books about weeds talking? There's some maturation there, Kelly.
Absolutely. I wish I would have studied this hard when I went to school.
Matt, big takeaway, and then also adjustment you're going to make in 2025 because of this field trial.
We sat down before the year and to try to decide what we could cut out of our corn budget, overall because of the price of corn. And we go through each different input and say, well, maybe we don't cut this. And before it's over with, we cut very little, from our budget, even though the corn was down. I think what we do, or I'm guilty of a lot, is, I've changed my program to bare bones prior to basically XtremeAg to now trying to, have that 300 bushel goal in mind, which I've never done on a whole field. And then we get to running scared, or I do. I get to running scared. Well, what if I don't put it on? And then I get to thinking, well, it's fertility. So we know fertility works. These other products that people call snake oils or whatever, maybe not, but this is fertility. So we know it's going to do us a better job.
Yeah.
This opened my eyes that that's not necessarily true. And Kelly talks about this a lot. Everybody wants to dump nitrogen on. Well, if you get your soil out of balance, you better have the micronutrients to support the nitrogen, or you're going to go further downhill instead of increase.
It's a waste.
Good.
It's a way, we talk about macros and micros, and I've said it before. I don't really think there are only two classifications, macros and micros. You've got nitrogen, then you've got P and K, then you've got the zinc and the sulfur and the calcium that we talk about, and then you've got the other micronutrients that nobody ever talks about. They're all important. Even though we don't need as much of it, they're all important. Or if you're just going to dump on nitrogen, you're wasting the nitrogen. It doesn't result in yield. We need everything. We need a balanced approach.
You went to the coffee shop where your dad, Gene, and his 71-year-old buddies all hang out and told him that you threw out twice as much nitrogen as you needed to for your whole entire career. They wouldn't believe you because they wouldn't want to believe they were that wrong.
I agree. Yeah, how about this? I've now discovered some equip money that is possible if you'll cut back your nitrogen. And they said that nobody ever takes it because in Iowa, nobody will ever put on less than 200 pounds of anhydrous with corn on corn. I'm like, I will be signing up for that program, and the equip money will be coming this direction.
So, okay, the adjustment you're going to make next year, we're staring down cheap corn, et cetera, et cetera. Matt, you're going to take some of this into account. The truth is somewhere between all four of these, I'm guessing.
Yes, I will do this. Hopefully someone will want to do this as another side-by-side trial, because that was one of the funnest things I've done at XtremeAg as far as a trial, is have these competition plots. And Kelly and I have talked about maybe, broadening this out at some different farms, putting some programs. Temple and I done this one time, in Maryland. We took my program up there. I beat him on ROI. He beat me on yield. That was fun to see. Yep. But what it is going to make me do is take more acreage and go in this direction. I'm going to keep taking these steps in this direction. Like I said, from 288 to 212 is 25%. How much further can I go on and I need to see that on an average, because our weather changes so much. Everybody's does.
It was one of my favorite things of all the field days I worked for XtremeAg. This was one of the favorite things, which now brings it to Galynn. Galynn, what are you going to do next year? Because you know what, you kept me intrigued and interested with this competition. What are you going to do next year?
Well, I mean, we're talking about doing a version of this with teams. So maybe pair two people together to get a little internal debate among teams, and then a little external trash talking across teams. It won't be the same everywhere. Like we might, challenge ourselves to put together the best foliar or the best planter applied program. We're going to shake this up. The idea is just like this one was. What can we learn? What lessons can we pull out of these? And more importantly, what lessons can the XtremeAg members pull out of these?
Galynn doesn't know it, but I know what he's going to do next year. I don't want to raise beans very bad because I can't make them profitable. And so Chad and Temple and Matt say that they can. And so I'm only going to raise 90 acres of beans next year, and it's going to be the four of us. Based on past record, I'm choosing Stephanie to be my partner.
I like it. All right, so we're going to stay tuned. Stay tuned. AgrolLquid's going to partner with XtremeAg for some cool studies just like this one. This was my favorite one, honestly, of all the field day stuff we did. But I got to say, Matt, you're awesome. You did a great job with this. I enjoyed your field day. If you missed the field days, you're listening to this or watching this, again, watch it so you can get this graph that Will's put up here a number of times for you to study it. Matt had an amazing field day. The Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Arkansas was there. We had a great panel after our field day. We came in, sat in the air conditioning, had amazing food, fried catfish. It was awesome. Galynn?
Hey, I want to make one more point, Damian, before you go, is that we are thinking of ways to help the grower be educated. So if you liked what we did here and you enjoyed it, we're trying to ratchet this up a lot next year so that we can have these kinds of discussions.
Well, the competition part makes it intriguing. Like, going to a field day is one thing, but when you go to a field day and you see there's a competition, and then we do the recap at the end like this, and then we're also going to do the trial results, I think that this is, it's more intriguing, and also it brings it home. The dollar amount brings this home.
Yeah. Join now, right? So you can see next year's.
There you go. Join now. XtremeAg. You can join XtremeAg, become a member for $750 a year. That's a very cheap price because you get access to all the data at the end of the year. You also get a direct line to people like Matt and Kelly. You can call them up and ask them questions. Also, you can stay tuned on a more pertinent basis with what's going on. And I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there right now. This was my favorite thing to watch. Thanks for being here. Kelly Garrett, Galynn Beer, Matt Miles, and as I call her, Stephanie Zelinko, the Caitlin Clark of crop production. I think I'm not stretching it when I say that, right? Till next time, thanks for being here. Go Caitlin.
That's a wrap for this episode of Cutting the Curve. Make sure to check out XtremeAg.farm for more great content to help you squeeze more profit out of your farming operation. Cutting the Curve is brought to you by Simon Innovations. Don't let your sprayer's limitations hold you back. Visit SimonInnovations.com and upgrade your sprayer's capabilities now.